Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jim Kleiber Show. Today is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, 1:02 p.m. Slightly late start today. What to talk about today? First, turn off the phone so I don't get any distractions. But second, what to talk about? I have a friend of mine who I've known for probably 10 or 11 years now, maybe 12 years, who has worked in the ICU here in the Detroit area, and I think has been in the COVID ICU unit for up to almost 8 months now. And she was just telling me yesterday how she's switching out, and in December she'll be moving to the emergency room, and she's really excited because lately in the COVID ward, she has been receiving patients who are angry at her, who are angry at the world, who are disbelieving. They don't believe that COVID is real. They don't believe that they actually have COVID. They don't know how it was possible that they got COVID. And then she kind of hears how they may have contracted it. And it was, for example, being at a wedding with 100 people and nobody wearing masks. And I can't fathom what these healthcare workers are feeling. I couldn't imagine what they were feeling in the beginning of this pandemic, when people were coming in and basically dying in droves in front of them, people coming in can't breathe, just getting overwhelmed and swarmed by people having a quite infectious disease, not knowing if they're going to get it, sleeping in their garages so they don't give it to their families if they do get it, potentially, getting sick and dying from their job. And I don't know how many healthcare workers and nurses and doctors in this country signed up, or in any country really, signed up to deal, or to know what this is like, to deal with such a overwhelming pandemic. Sure, they sign up to help people, but I don't know if they think they're going to get thrown into some type of war, almost like a war zone medic situation. And so I couldn't imagine what it felt like in the beginning, when at least the patients seemed to be filled with gratitude that the nurses were helping them, that the doctors were helping them. They felt so grateful just for all the attention and the support. I mean, to be a nurse, to be a doctor, to be somewhere, a healthcare worker, anywhere in the hospital, and to be the last person that person sees before they die, to be there, to have to help that person go through that process, and to have to inform the family that the person has died, and to not even let the family come in and be with the person because of COVID protocols, because of the fear of spreading the virus even further. I can't imagine how much that must hurt, how much that must hurt, how frustrating that might be. But that's when people are grateful for your work. I can't imagine how it must feel when people are angry at you, angry at the world, and just frustrated with everything, and they take it out on you. I can't imagine. How long is the trauma of COVID-19 going to impact our healthcare workers? How deep is this pain going to run? How many generations will this scar? Because it won't just stay within their family, their humanhood. It will pass on, most likely, from generation to generation. Not the virus itself, but the emotional impact of it, the loss of faith or hope in humanity. I mean, if I were a nurse, I would feel so angry, so frustrated, and so hopeless when I think that people are still going to weddings without wearing masks. Because you know what, at the end of the day, listen, if if you don't care if you get sick, or if you don't care if your relatives get sick because you don't think you're going to die or you don't think they're going to die, you getting the virus and spreading it to someone else is almost inevitably going to make the job of the healthcare workers worse. It's going to send more people to the hospital. It is going to send more people to death. And these are the people who are going to have to see the death day after day after day. And listen, I get it. If you think you're fine, you think you're young, you think you're healthy, and you don't, or you think you're strong and you know you're fine, you don't need the help. Fine. But do you know a single person who is a healthcare worker? Do you know anyone who's a nurse or who's a doctor? Do you care about these people? Because these people are getting overwhelmed. Please do it for them. Even if you're not going to do it for your neighbor or your parent or the stranger down the street, please do it for the healthcare workers. Please. At the same time, I'm curious why these people who go in there are so angry and so frustrated and still don't believe that this exists. And I wonder what they're feeling and why they're believing that it doesn't exist. You know, my friend said that she walks into some of these rooms and they have Fox News blaring, and she'd never really watched Fox News before, so she didn't know, but she was just like, wow, I can't believe the stuff they're saying on there. And I wonder how many people who have this frustration and anger about coronavirus, who are getting it and not wearing masks, are watching Fox News. I'm not against watching Fox News. I'm not against watching really any form of television or news or entertainment. I think what I am against is only watching certain channels. And that's where I'm curious. Do people who watch Fox News only watch Fox News? Or do they also watch channels from different, like across the spectrum? CNN's, local news, NBC or ABC, maybe even BBC from overseas, or Al Jazeera from overseas, or different channels. Do they read only Breitbart, or do they also read New York Times, or do they read Washington Post, or do they read, what other outlets are they reading? And I don't know. I just worry sometimes that on Fox News and on listening to only one channel will give the emotions that the people on the channel are feeling. And it can get really stuck into an echo chamber. And I don't know. I worry that it's not even so much about the news. It's about these people. I care about these people because I know some of the people who are going in are probably my friends and family. Our neighbor's father died from this recently. And apparently the father and his wife were being very careful to not get it. But I think one of their daughter or something brought it into the house. And I think the daughter wasn't being too careful. I don't know. But just, I know I have friends and family who are angry at CNNs and the different certain media channels that are reporting about COVID-19. They don't believe it exists. And if they do believe it exists, they don't seem to want to admit that it exists, or they don't think it's nearly as bad as people are saying it is. I don't know why they don't trust scientists. They don't trust New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, some of these main media outlets, NBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what to say sometimes. I think some of them think that these outlets are lying to them all the time and are really biased against them and don't care about them and are ignoring them. I don't know. I can't imagine what it might feel like to get sick with this virus and to not think it exists, and then to go into hospital and not think that this exists or it's a big deal, and then listen to the TV where the people are telling me this is not a big deal, this is not a big deal. Oh, it's just like the flu. And then be asking myself, but why am I dying? What's wrong with me if I'm dying of something that's not so bad? And to have that internal cognitive dissonance. Okay, this is not so bad. This is something like the flu, yet I am dying. Is there something wrong with me? Am I weak? Because this is something that is not that big of a deal, yet I am dying here. And then still only listen to those people because those people say, everybody else is lying to you. Everybody else says this is not a big deal. Stop worrying. It's not a big deal. Oh, we're strong. We don't need to do this. We're tough. We're strong. And then to be in that situation where I'm feeling incredibly weak, I would probably feel deeply ashamed, thinking there's something wrong with me. That all the people that I trust are telling me that this is not a big deal, and yet it feels like a big deal to me. And just not knowing what to do. I think one of the problems we've had in this pandemic, at least in how we've responded to it in the US, is that we've said either it's a medical problem or it's an economic problem. It's both. It's both. It's hurting people medically and economically. Not everyone. A lot of people economically are okay. Some people are arguably even better off during this pandemic. The ones who didn't rely on human workers and the ones who didn't rely on human workers in person. And the ones who sold things, again, without having human workers or human workers in person. But medically, many of us, again, maybe it's the same thing. Medically, some of us are fine. If we're younger, it doesn't impact us nearly as much. Maybe that's the problem with this, is that it impacts people differently, medically and economically. Some people get more hit economically than others, and some people get hit more medically than others. And so it can be really hard for us to recognize the impact that we are having on other people. For me, I've been home with my parents who are in their 60s, and my mom was going through chemo starting at the end of February until September, I believe. So for me, it was very clear that if I went out and contracted COVID and I brought it back to the house, there was a very good chance it was going to harm my parents very strongly, especially my mom. And I didn't want to do that. So I wasn't so worried about my physical health. If I were in a different situation, if I were living by myself, I probably would have taken this less seriously. And, but economically, I'm used to running workshops in person, and I can't run workshops in person. There are no conferences. There are definitely no overseas international conferences. So that's a huge, economic lifeline that got cut off from me. And so I'm definitely feeling that. I think for me, I'm feeling both the economic, less so compared to some other people because I don't have as many costs right now. And then more so on the medical side because of what my mom was going through. Whereas I think other people are feeling the economic pain much more and less on the medical pain. And so I think it's that disparity in impact that is causing a big problem in this country, and the fact that we seem to say it's either this or this. It's both. It's both. How can we address both? I talked about this on the show yesterday. We need to address both. Arguably, I think we need to address even deeper the emotional side of things. When Ebola was spreading in West Africa, I wrote a blog post talking about how quickly fear had spread to the U.S. Ebola took a very long time to spread to the U.S., and it didn't spread too much to the country. A few people came in. I think were quarantined pretty quickly. But the fear of Ebola spread immediately. And I think that's not something we talk about a lot in this country or in other countries. It's just the emotional side of things. The fear that so many of us have, again, medically or economically. Fear that we're going to have a long-term illness. Fear that it's going to kill us or somebody that we know within a week or two. Fear that it's that we could get an infectious disease just by talking with somebody, standing too close to somebody. Not even talking about kissing or sex, just talking about talking to somebody. Or maybe even touching a surface and then touching our face. Or even just being in the same room, not talking to them, but they're talking into the air. The fear that we can get this viral infection just from the air. I don't think we talk about this fear. Or on the economic side, the fear that there's going to be a shutdown and we're going to lose our homes like we did before in 2008, 2009. Fear that we've never been unemployed, and fear and shame of having to go pick up food at the food, what do they call them? At the food banks, to go pick up food at the food bank for our family so that we can eat because we're not used to it. To have to file for unemployment, the shame in filing for unemployment when we've never filed. The fear that we're going to lose a business that we've been running for our whole lives. We've put our whole life into this business and it's just going to disappear. The sense of no control that the governor or someone at a higher state can just come in and shut down business. And we can't do anything. They just stop our customers from coming and we can't do anything. Or the fear that the customers, even if they can come, won't come. Or the confusion or the fear of, well, what if some customers come and they wear masks and other ones don't, and they don't abide by if there's a mask mandate for indoor mask wearing, they don't abide by the law. The confusion and the uncertainty on how to resolve that conflict. What else? Just the fear of being at home for too long, the feeling stuck, the feeling anxious, the feeling nervous, not sleeping well, fear that our kids aren't going to develop as quickly as they would, or they're going to be traumatized by this experience and not wanting our kids to have that experience. I mean, so much going on emotionally. We don't seem to talk about it. And that's not even to talk about some of the protests and the police brutality and how that impacts both sides and people who are connected to both sides, right? So the people of color, the black people in this country, and police officers, and people who are connected to both sides, some side, either side, both sides, all sides. So much emotion swirling, and we just don't seem to talk about it. And then unfortunately, we just dump the emotion on somebody else. So the person who comes into the ICU for COVID, the person who's angry at the world is angry at the world, and they often project it on the nurse in front of them. And maybe what they're really angry at, maybe like 90% of their anger is, who knows where it's coming from. It could be coming from believing that this was a hoax and now they're sick with it and in the hospital. So they're angry that somebody lied to them, or they're angry at themselves for believing the lie, or they're angry at themselves for not taking better care of themselves because, maybe they're in the hospital because they're overweight, or because they were eating the wrong food, or they were super stressed out in life. They didn't really process a lot of the stress and the anger that they've had, so it just built up and added to heart troubles and blood pressure problems. Who knows? Just so much emotional stuff going on, and we talk about it, but we don't talk about it deep enough. We don't really talk about what we're feeling. We just feel it. I don't know. I just know I don't want to be either of those people right now. I don't want to be the nurse in the ICU, and I don't want to be the patient in the ICU. And I can't imagine the pain that they're both going through. And then sometimes blaming each other. They're both struggling. Just wish we would show our struggle more. I know sometimes this podcast can be pretty dark or down, especially from somebody. You'd think I'd be a happy-go-lucky guy. I'm known for smiling and laughing a lot. But I think to smile and laugh a lot, sometimes we have to talk about the things that are more sad, that make us angry, that make us frustrated, that make us feel hopeless. We have to talk about these things. Because if we don't, they just bottle up, and then they leak out onto somebody else. And that person doesn't even know where it's coming from. Who knows? The person who's in the ICU right now, that anger may be built up over years. That may not just be anger from getting admitted to the ICU. It could be anger from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years of interacting with humans and not resolving the anger, not expressing the anger. And then it all comes out. As I've worked on this, as I've worked on emotional communication over the last 8 years. Sorry, I looked at the clock. There's 6 minutes left. Oh gosh, what is it? It's 2020. I started 2012 officially. So 8 years. I can get so easily distracted. The heater just kicked on. What's going on? I should turn that off. I lost my train of thought. Talk about emotional communication for the last 8 years. And I don't know, most of us just say we're not supposed to talk about emotions. Almost all cultures I've come across say it's okay to express certain emotions and not other emotions. We're supposed to feel this, you're not supposed to feel that. And I just wish we would express them more. I just wish we would be more honest with each other about how we're feeling. Gosh, so refreshing to hear when somebody just tells me, this is how I'm feeling right now. Oh, really? Even if it frustrates me, it still can be refreshing to hear, if that makes sense. I could feel frustrated, but also relaxed and calm and almost grateful that the person would open up and share, because it helps me figure out how to coordinate with that person. I don't know. It's a struggle. How much are you sharing how you feel these days? Are you telling people online? Are you telling people face-to-face? Are you telling people over the phone? Over a Zoom call? On Facebook? Are you even sharing it with yourself? Are you journaling to yourself? Are you having conversations in your head? Are you asking how you're feeling? Do you want to know how you're feeling, or are you afraid to know? There's no right answer. How much are other people sharing how they're feeling with you? It's funny, as I say this, I think about, how I've cut off communication with some people because I'm afraid. I'm afraid to say what I'm feeling. I'm afraid how they're going to react. I'm afraid I'm going to open up and be vulnerable and they're just going to attack me and say, oh, yeah, you're such an idiot. There's something wrong with you. Gosh, you think you're so good. You think you're better than the world. You think blah, 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 blah. And I'm just going to shrink even more. I just wish we would say how we're feeling. Gosh, how much easier it would be to coordinate. How hard it is to figure out what to do together when people don't share how they're feeling. It's hard to know. It's almost like we're in competition with each other and we think the other person's going to hurt us if we open up and share the secret coordinates for what's going on inside of us. It's the hidden information we think. Challenge is that emotions are written all over our faces most of the time, in our posture and our breathing habits and like our walk. There was something recently that said by analyzing someone's gait or someone's walk, computers can tell how they're feeling. But it often doesn't get at the thing that's making us feel that. So if I'm feeling angry and I just say I feel angry, it's like, yeah, it's obvious. It's like you're ready to punch the table. But if I say I'm feeling angry because somebody I know got COVID and died from it, and I'm so angry at the person who gave it to them, or then it's more helpful to know where the anger is being directed or where we think it's coming from. So in conclusion, while I think we are struggling economically, and I think many of us are struggling economically, many of us are struggling medically, some of us aren't struggling in either or only in one. I think most of us are struggling in some way emotionally. And just, I hope that we talk about it more. I hope that we open up and share with each other a little more just what's going on. Because when we do, I think we realize we're not alone. It can be so easy to forget that other people are feeling similar things to us. I had a friend who lost her boyfriend recently to diabetic shock. He died suddenly. And she told me how being at the wake or being at the funeral in her culture really helped her to know that she wasn't the only one grieving the loss of this man. To know that there were other people who were feeling the pain and the anger and the sadness and the confusion and the frustration and the hopelessness and the emptiness and the numbness that she was feeling. We all feel almost the same things. We just rarely tell other people that we're feeling. So I hope we can start opening up a little more to each other, just to let each other know that we're all in this together, whether we want to be or not. And it feels good to know. Feels good. It feels comforting for me to know that other people are going through this as well. All right, y'all. Hope you stay safe and have a little fun, and also just feel a little closer to the people around you. All right. Take care, y'all.